So Chad, there's a sucker born every day, as the adage goes, but as far as I'm concerned and looking at the news in South Africa, there's also a scamster born every day, sometimes two a day. We just seem to have no end to it. And now there's a guy with supercars, watches, and millions are missing.
So this guy's on a whole different level. We were investigating a guy, Tinus Janse van Vieren. He was involved in selling non-existent crypto products, purportedly from Discovery. Discovery never had such a product. He took a lot of money from a lot of victims, and we were investigating where this money had gone. A lot of this money had been laundered through, surprisingly, Bitcoin, through a business that he established on the East Rand. And then we got a call from an informant. And while we were chatting about what we had found on Tinus, they said, well, what about Art? And I said, well, he doesn't kind of strike me as a guy that would be into art. But, you know, the money laundering, Art is very prolific. He said, no, not Art the person. I said, okay, tell me a little bit more. So they said, well, he gave a lot of the money to a chap called Art Viljoen. I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. He said he stayed in the northern suburbs. He was related, Tinus was related to Art Viljoen through marriage. And Art was always admired by the family. He very tall bloke, went and played basketball in the States, came back to South Africa and seemed to be living the dream. Had a penthouse in the northern suburbs, had supercars, could drop a couple of $100K at the top jewelers for gold jewelry, had diamond studs bigger than my thumb, and he was really living La Vida Loca. And while Tinus was involved with this scam where he had scammed people out of their life savings for the so-called crypto investment, he was looking for ways to reinvest this money or to launder this money, and he went to Art. And my informers were there when he met with Art, and in this complex where Art had this penthouse, there was this floor, and on this floor there was this room, very well sealed, biometrics, cameras, you name it, and he opened this room and there was just rows and rows of servers. So I interrupted my source. I said, was he mining crypto? Because that's what it sounded like. They said, well, that's what they thought, but no, it was rendering. I'd never heard of rendering. I said, what's rendering? They said, well, the explanation they got from Art is that he owned the software for architectural rendering. In other words, if an artist would sketch something, it could be rendered into something 3D that somebody could actually walk through and look at. And it sounded very plausible. I think it is plausible. I think such software does exist. I've seen it online. But he made out that he had a very unique IP. And as such, architectural firms from around the world could only make use of his software. And each of those servers housed the software and housed a particular architectural firm. So if you invested X amount, you would get a server and you would get all the business generated from that server from the different architectural companies throughout the world. Now to you and me, it sounds a bit strange, because why would he have the unique IP? Why would it be in this high security complex just below his penthouse in the northern suburbs of Joburg? But people want to believe, and they want to get bang for their buck, and they want to get a good return. So he started taking money from a lot of people. Some of the money he took money from, some of the people rather that he took money from, were not the kind of people you actually want to do business with. We think that a lot of the money he received was actually the proceeds of crime. Because out of the majority of victims, most people didn't want to make a criminal case once it came out that there was no rendering. It was nothing more than a glorified Ponzi. But what made this Ponzi slightly different is that he invested a lot of the money that he got from the different marks into vehicles. He had a collection of supercars second to none. We're talking Porsches, we're talking Ferraris, we're talking collectible BMs, Mercs. He had this array of cars. And every time he was behind in paying any of his investors, I would call them marks, the interest on their capital, he would lend them a vehicle. If one of them had a child that was matriculating and had a matric ball, he would give them a supercar to use. If one of them was celebrating an anniversary, he'd give them a supercar for the weekend. So he made them feel a lot more comfortable with the lifestyle he was leading and the fact that he had these incredible cars at his disposal. What people didn't realize, of course, is that these cars that were at his disposal was bought with their money. It wasn't as a result of his success over the years. All he was doing was pumping investors' money into his very, very lavish lifestyle. There was a jeweler in Sandton City where he dropped hundreds of thousands of rand in cash to buy gold jewelry. Now, things went south for him. Things went south very fast. It got out that it was, in fact, a scam, and some of the people that invested with him wanted their money back. They weren't prepared to wait for court cases. They weren't prepared to go to the police. They did it their own way. And the story goes that he got grabbed, he got held against his will for a couple of days, and to sign over the jewelry, sign over the watch collection, and even some of the vehicles were taken. Shortly thereafter, once he was released, he hopped on a plane and he skipped South Africa.
Where is he now?
We think he's in either Germany or Switzerland. Some of the people that we don't believe had nefarious agendas, who genuinely believed in this rendering scheme of sorts that invested money with him, have instructed us. We've opened a case. We initially reported it through to the Hawks. We then opened a case with SAPS. The case has been escalated, and we're hoping that a warrant of arrest is issued and that there's an Interpol red notice for him. But as it stands right now, we believe he's in Europe.
So pretty much untouchable. Where's the money?
Some people got their money back. They used their own ways and means of doing it, which I don't believe was right because it was to the detriment of the others. A lot of people are going to turn around and say, in South Africa, the only justice you're going to get is that type of justice because they think our criminal justice system is broken. It's not broken. The wheels of justice move very slow, but it's because it's a worldwide phenomenon. No government in the world has been able to keep up with the sheer volume of fraud. And somehow or another, the Black Swan event of COVID just made fraud go to a completely different level. It's up there in the stratosphere. I talk about us being in the midst of a scamopolis. There are so many people, and as you said at the outset of this interview, there's a scammer born every second. They are, and they become more and more ingenious each and every day.